Hi guys, and welcome to a video which is basically a continuation of those tutorials videos that I've been doing lately. And well, I've got a whole bunch of IEMs here that I want to share with you what I've been able to do with them. Some of them I've done a long time ago and I've just recently improved upon them. Others I did from scratch recently, and I've got, like I said, I've got a whole bunch of them. I want to start with probably the one, well, like I said, I've got a whole bunch of them that I want to show you, but I think one of the first ones that I really want to show you is the TRN V90 and how, well, basically how you can improve upon it, because it is a nice sounding IEM from in stock format. I mean, you know, let's be honest. It is a nice sounding IEM. It's not perfect. Obviously, it has its flaws, but it was an IEM that was relatively well tuned. Let me just zoom in here. I was just finding the graph. Okay, so this was basically the curve of the stock V90 using a foam tip. Okay, you might notice here that the peak is not exactly that 8K, but look, it doesn't really change much the location of the rest. It's just a little minor thing here, and the idea here was just basically to show you what I've been able to do. Now, granted, this mod might be something that not all will want to do, because it is a little bit more complicated to do, let's put it that way, to a certain extent, but I think it's a mod that made sense. At least for me, it made sense. Like I was saying, the V90 is well, was previously the top of the line from TRN. It was a 1+4, well, it is a 1+4 hybrid, and you know, following what was typical of the time in terms of hardware to use. Internally, it was relatively cheap. PAs, relatively cheap DD driver. Although the DD driver in this particular IEM, I have to admit that it's one of the better ones. And it's also the same DD driver that you find, for example, in TRN STM, and that you find in a lot of other IEMs, funny enough. So its quality is there, although simple looking and perhaps outdated by comparison to today's availability. It is a good, and it was a good DD driver, and it deserved well, it deserved the mods that I did to it, basically. So metal shell, as we all know, 1+4, and in this particular format or case, what we had here in stock format was, although graphically it was a V-shaped, and it wasn't like you had any crazy peaks or anything, at least in this area of 5K, as you can see, it was nicely tamed, so there wasn't really much in terms of sibilance. What it did have was that very typical BA kind of sound, that plasticky, metallic-y kind of sound, which especially in this area here was very noticeable. So I played around with it a little bit, and one of the first things that I did to it, or one of the first alterations that I did to it in this search for, let's say, a better sounding V90, because I honestly do really enjoy the sound of the V90, what I did was I added just the now famous Tungsten filter, the Tanya, or the oxygen, or you can also use a 500 grade filter. So you can also use, and these are probably the ones that will be the cheapest and the easiest to obtain. You can use these filters, 500 grade, 4.5 mil. Okay, and with the introduction, or with the usage of that, basically what we got was what I've just showed, what I've just put up there on graph. Let me just align it slightly. So the original green, the orange, with the usage of the tangent filter. There was a slight decrease here, okay, and a slight increase here. So overall, what happened was that the general sound kind of still maintained itself. That plasticiness, that metallicness still maintained itself. So I said to myself, no, I've got to improve upon this even more. So I actually opened up the V90. It's a relatively easy process to do. You just put a sharp tool there and you pry it open. It actually opens up quite easily. And I left the tangent filter, but one of the two BAs which is in the nozzle, I disconnected it, and bam, perfect. That was it. That was all that was needed. So the tangent filter is responsible for this easier rise here of the pinna, more, not smoother. It has the speak like in stock format at 4, which doesn't really bug me. It didn't really bother me. Carried on with that nice smoothness here of the 5K was maintained. But then, as you can see, it lost energy up top, and it's this loss of energy that made it then lose that excessiveness, plasticness, that metallic timbre and that was it. And all I did was, like I said, just disconnected one of the two BAs internally. It's not a difficult thing to do, honestly. It isn't. You can easily see which are the wires which actually go to the front BAs, and all you have to do is just disconnect one of them. The wires are both soldered on the back of the DD driver, so there's no crossover network board or anything. The crossover is actually on the DD driver, on the back of the DD driver, and I just cut the one wire. That was it. That's all I did. I unsoldered it. But you can just cut the wire. That's it. It doesn't really matter which of the two DDs you disconnect. The results are the same. I tried it and the results are the same. And alas, there was the result. I mean, like I said, the V shape, the V signature is still maintained. It's still got this nice punchy full bass. The mids are very nice. They've always been very nice. Yes, they could have that metallicness, but they were very nice. I never really found the mids specific, especially for an IEM at this price, to be offensive in any way. And reduced the energy up top, and just made for a much more pleasing, overall balanced sound, in my opinion. It's now become a 1+3, and like I said, really nice. I've done this mod now on 3 other V90s, just to see if the consistency maintained itself and it made sense. And yes, it makes sense if you are willing to open up the IEM. Open it up, just like I said, just follow the wires which go to the 2 front BAs, cut one of the wires, and that's it. One of them will be disconnected, and this is basically the result that you will get. So that's the V90 out of the way. The other one that I got a lot of, well, I mentioned it, so it's obviously that I then got people asking me about it, was the TRN STM, which is this graph here, which was an IEM that I found that in its day didn't really get the deserved love that it was worth. It uses exactly the same DD as the V90, although with a different tuning, and because it's got a different tuning, obviously you can see that the bass energy is substantially reduced. I'll just quickly put here the V90 so you can actually see what I mean. Let me just align the two. Sorry. So this is the V90, the modified one, my one, compared to the STM stock format. Okay, so yes, you can see that the V90's got more bass and so on and so forth. The STM, no, the STM's got this really, I mean, for me it's almost perfect bass. It's warm enough, doesn't bleed into the mids. It's absolutely amazing. Very nice throughout the whole mids and upper mids and presence area. Very nice. It then has this peak, which is a peak related to the actual well, coupler to an extent, but to also the BA, and it's got this energy here. Again, it's biggest flaw is that you do notice that metallicness of the BA. It is there, it is present, but with the usage of a foam tip you can make this more tolerable. And the mod that I then did is a very simple mod, which really made the difference. Let me just actually put this in blue so it stands out a little bit better and you guys can see. There we go. Okay, as you know, the STM, okay, here we go, STM has removable nozzles, which in stock format they basically do not do or do not change anything. Okay, and all you basically do is you remove one of these nozzles, you unscrew it, just show you. So you unscrew it, there we go. And if you notice carefully, the BA is over there, and all I do is just put a Y2 filter on top of the BA. You just, you know, just glue a Y2 filter on top of the BA, put the nozzle back on. I use the red one. Like I said, it doesn't really matter which one you use, they're going to be always the same. I use the red one, as you can see there. Focus, 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 focus. Don't want to focus, you will focus. There we go. Okay. And foam tip and so on and so forth. And that's the result you have, ladies and gentlemen. Base maintains itself the same. It even tightens up more this whole area of the mids and upper mids and presence, and slightly reduces this area here up top to a more almost equal level of the rest. If you can see here, it's almost equal. While in stock format you could see that it was it wasn't that it was substantially high. You could feel that excess there was much more in comparison to what you had here in the base. And now you've basically got, if you look carefully, you've basically got a nice flat line all the way across. All the way across. Look at that. Okay? And you might say to yourself, oh, but this is going to be a very sterile sounding IEM. Sorry about that. Let me just show you again. Yeah, so you see it's a nice straight line all the way across as compared to stock, which was a little bit higher. Okay? So you're going to be saying, oh, but this is going to be a sterile sounding IEM and so on and so forth. No, you couldn't be further from the truth. Very, very nice sounding IEM. I mean, for what this IEM costs, honestly, it puts to shame a lot of the latest offerings. And to be very honest with you, like I've said this many times before, we have plenty of offerings. Yes, we have every week, hundreds almost, but dozens of IEMs being launched. But the quality of these IEMs isn't always the best. It isn't always the one that is desired. And the STM is a perfect example of an oldie, which is really very good and deserves to be modified slightly so that you can actually improve upon its performance. Okay, fine, so the looks are a little bit outdated and so on and so forth, but honestly, if you have them, go for it. There is, however, one small little detail that I want to call your attention to with regards to the STM, which is the STM, and I've got several pairs. It is not as consistent in its performance up top here as the V90 is. Okay. There are some that this increase or this energy here in this area will be way more than what is on the base section, and without really measuring it, it's a little bit difficult to ascertain where those peaks are or where those peaks aren't. So my suggestion to you is, if you find that in stock format it sounds balanced across the line, then it probably means that you do have one like mine. Okay, if you do find that it's excessively energetic up top, then it probably means that you have one of the variants that's a little bit more energetic. And I think this has to do with different batches, because I got those STMs at different periods of time. This particular STM that I have is one of the first batches, and I've got one now recently that I just received. which is almost the same. The other two that I have were the in-between batches. So the first one I got it sometime in late 2019. The other two were around 2020, late 2020, early 2021. And this one again comes back to more of this type of curve. So it's you know, with it the reality is it's going to be basically a hit or miss with regards to the STM, and I apologize for that. It's just absolutely nothing I can do. This is driver variance, QC, whatever you want to call it. It is what it is. Anyway, that's these two out of the way. I know a lot of people were asking me about it, so that's these two out of the way. The next one is one which is, well, it's an IM that was released recently. Okay, and I'll just show you its graph first to see if any of you might recognize it. Okay, number 5. There we go. It's that graph there, and that graph there belongs to none other than the WaistDrum, the HzSound WaistDrum, the little micro DD that they micro IM that they launched recently. And you know, it's one of those IMs that you like it or you don't like it. It's capable enough. It's not. It's got its faults. You know, it goes up against some of the more popular choices in that particular segment, namely the Dustproof Tanya and the DQSM Hermit. Although in my review I actually mentioned that this one does have more similarities with the Hermit, and thus and because it's more easily available, I would suggest it as an alternative to the Hermit. And I've actually just placed the graph here of the Tanya so that we can just see how the two compare. Okay, so as you can see, in stock format, the Tanya does have this nice mid-bass focus. It's a little bit darker. It's got this kind of harmonish roll off here, a little bit darker, not as detailed. Although the detail of the WaistDrum, you could call it maybe a little bit of a forced detail and not really natural, so it's a little bit colored. And then yes, the biggest difference is the fact that the WaistDrum doesn't have as much bass energy, mid bass and ultimate sub bass, although the Tanya is by no means a sub bass monster. So what did I do? What did I decide to change? Yes, this one. Let me just put it in red so you guys can see. There we go, and just align it nicely there. There we go, align there nicely. Okay, I'll just remove the stock one first. Actually, I'll take away the Tanya first and leave the stock. Basically what I've done is to go and fetch this energy in the bass, which will kind of emulate the energy of the bass of the Tanya. I just added a Y2 filter onto the front vent. So front vent, see if I can somehow focus this. There we go. See there? I think you can see it there. Y2 filter on the front vent. Okay. And on the nozzle. Okay. To again emulate more of this nice, easier drop of the Tanya. Just remove it. So to get this kind of a curve here, I added a 500 grade filter. And well, effectively, if you want to say it that way, I've created a Tanya basically, and it sounds very much like the Tanya. So for those that for some reason didn't enjoy the sound of the WaistDrum, you know, in the way that it was in stock format, or wanted a little bit more bass or whatever, this is again a very easy mod to do. Y2 filter on the front vent, 500 filter on the nozzle, and my friends, it's there. It's easy. It's a removable mod. You can take it away and bring it back to original stock format if you want, and it sounds really nice. I personally actually prefer the way it sounds this way than in stock format, honestly. I mean, it sounds fine in stock format, but for me it was the lack of bass that it was the biggest thing there that just put me off. If for some reason you don't want the bass that the Y2 filter adds onto the equation, and you want to keep the stock bass, it's as easy as not putting the Y2 filter. You just don't add the Y2 filter and you will have this bass curve. Everything will stay the same, and you will just tidy it up top, which personally I think is a worthwhile mod to do. So you can have it basically like the stock WaistDrum in terms of its bass performance, and then just tidy up the mids, the upper mids presence area in a nicer way, like you see here. And again, it's a easy mod to do, reversible, and that's it. I mean, really no secrets here. That's number 3 out of the way. 1 second. And now I'm going to take you to the TRN ST2, which effectively is an MT1. Okay, so let me just take this out. Just remove these out. Remove this. Okay. ST2, there we go. ST2. Okay, so stock ST2 first of all. That's not stock ST2. Stock ST2 8. There we go. Okay, that's a stock ST2, which in essence, okay, ST2. All right. In essence, it's basically an MT1 all the way across up to about here, and then you have the BA to give it all this energy or this extra shine up top. Some like it, some don't. I personally didn't like it. I thought it was way too much, and it actually spoiled the whole potential that the DD driver has, which is the same driver as the MT1. And as you know, I've done the mod on the MT1, and basically what I did was I just applied the same mod on here. Okay, so tidied up the bass slightly, okay, by adding a Y4 filter on the actual DD, so tightened up the bass there nicely. Use the transition filter to alter the pinna gain and the way that it goes up. Some of you might argue, oh, okay, but it's not ideal because it's peaking there at 3.5K more or less. Yes, that is true. It is peaking there at 3.5K and it's not ideal. But bear with me. And then on the BA, I did exactly the same mod that I've done with the STM. Since I removed the stock nozzle filter, I just stuck on the actual BA a Y2 filter again. This reduced the energy, this excessive energy that you had up top there. And overall, this whole thing now is way more balanced, way more coherent. And it actually sounds nice. It's one of those, now the ST2 is one of those IEMs that you actually want to listen to it, because it's got a lot of the magic that the modified MT1 that I've done has. Relatively nice bass, doesn't bleed into the mids, nice smooth pinna gain, doesn't peak where it should peak ideally, but it's not really a problem. It dips here at 5K, so no sibilance, and you got that little extra energy up top there, which just complements it nicely. And when you actually compare the two, back and forth, the MT1, the modified one, the Acros as I call it, and this one, you actually come to the conclusion that this one actually sounds nicer. Fine, it might be a little bit artificial, that energy up top, but it sounds nicer. So I think it's again a relatively easy mod to do and very much worthwhile. And again, always using very simple things. Out of all the mods I've showed you so far, the one that is the most, let's say, elaborate is the V90 mod, in the sense that you have to, unsolder a wire or anything. The rest is, yes, you have to open some of them and put a filter on the back of the DD, but they're not really, in my opinion, complicated mods to do if you have, a little bit of of a steady hand, and some DIY capabilities. And finally, we arrive at the last IEM that I modified, and it was an IEM that I was looking. When I first heard about it, I was very enthusiastic, very excited about it. And well, there's been mixed opinions about it in terms of the reviews from some other reviewers. Most of them have found it to be excessively bright and just too much, and so on and so forth. I mean, for example, I will, for the sake of comparison, just put here the one that started it all off, which is the 7 Hz timeless. Okay, and as you can see, although when you look at this graph, it seems that okay, they got basically the same bass, and when you listen to it, yes, the bass is very similar. The timeless then just has a very correct way in which it does its mids, upper mids, and presence, and it has that energy past, the 10K, and everything just sounds super detailed. The resolution is absolutely unreal. And when I first heard the MUSE, I just found it to be dark, and it sounded dark because you have this peak here is, in my opinion, very much coupler related peak. And so you basically, what you hear is this drop and carries on and then goes up again. So you have a big chunk of information here in the presence area, okay, in the let's say the early treble area, that is missing, and it just shuts down the IEM. It just sounds dark, and then the way the mids are done, upper mids are done, is just wonky. It just doesn't sound right. It just sounds wrong. And so I said to myself, no, there's got to be something that can be done. And that's what I set about doing. So I played around. I looked at the video actually from Short Bus, from Michael, on what he did on the S12, the Let's Shure S12. I tried that particular mod on here. It didn't work. The actual shell of the MUSE, it has a whole bunch of vents and holes all over the place. So the truth was this: the MUSE Power had basically all the right ingredients, but it was just, in my opinion, tuned wrongly, and in the opinion of many other IEM reviewers, it's not been an IEM that has been getting much love. Me particularly, I found the mids to be wonky, weird, and dark overall. Others found it to be the mids, yes, wonky, weird, but excessively bright, just wrong. So, like I set about wanting to modify this, and I came up with this. Let me just take away the timeless. There we go. I'm actually going to put this in a different color so we can see it better. Let me put it in red. There we go. Okay. And that's it. So what effectively happened here? Well, the fact that I've actually been able to bring down this rise of the pin again, and kind of make it a little bit less up and downish, has enabled us to perceive the overall balance of this whole area here, this whole spectrum here, to be more coherent. It sounds more correct now. It sounds more right. And the peak here as well of the coupler, I've been able to reduce it, and well, maybe some peak as well related with the driver. So this overall balance here, the way that it transitioned from the mids to the upper mids, and then into the presence area, and then dips before it actually peaks up again, it just sounds now more correct. Yes, I would have liked to not have this peak here at 5K, I will admit, but it just completely opened up the IEM in a totally different manner. It's by no means a timeless. No, it isn't. And I'll just put the timeless up here quickly so that we can actually just compare it. Okay, 1 second, sorry. Oops, there we go. So that's, let me take away the original one. Okay, so it's by no means a timeless, but it's just, it now sounds more almost flattish, like this. The timeless sounds across this whole area between 2 and 8K, more or less. Okay, it sounds more flattish. It doesn't sound so up and downish like it was before. I didn't really perceive a loss of any bass like it shows here, the ultimate sub bass. I didn't. And overall the sound, like I said, it's much improved. It sounds way nicer, more balanced, more coherent. What I did notice was that it needs power to really shine, okay? Because now it's effectively become tuned more along the lines of a TIN Hi-Fi P1 Max. Let me show you. And the TIN Hi-Fi, the P1 Max, I think that one of the reasons that maybe a lot of people are not enjoying it or really seeing its capabilities is the fact that they are not giving it the power that it needs. Okay, okay, let me just change the color, put it to blue, okay, and take away so 3, yes, take away the timeless, which is number 7, and then just balance these two. There we go. Okay, I've centered them at around 500 Hertz as opposed to 1K, because this is how I perceive them when I compare them back and forth. Okay, so with my mod on the MUSE, I've basically made it sound very much like the P1 Max, but it's got a little bit extra resolution up top. It's got a little bit extra detail that comes from this energy that the MUSE has up top there. And that's basically it, you know. What did I do to the MUSE in terms of its mod? Very simple. I took a medium grade. Obviously I took the stock nozzle out, and you know, whatever was there, I took it out, and then I took one of these foam filters, medium density. So it's not the high density like the Sony's, not the low density. It's a medium density foam, and I stuck a Y6 filter on either end. So I stuck these filters, like the Y2, the Y3s, the Y4s, but the Y6, I stuck one on, let me just show you the other actual foam. So I stuck one, I stuck one on either end of the foam, on the front and on the back as well, and just shoved it into the nozzle. That's it, simple. I tried various other mods. Some were more I wouldn't say more effective, but more significant, the alteration in terms of the sound, but I just didn't like the way it sounded. It just shut down the IEM too much. I was able to have one particular curve that this area between 1 and 4 was almost flat, okay, really flat, and then it just peaked slightly and then it dropped. I just didn't like the sound of that. It just sounded very dark, very closed off, and I like the fact that I was actually able to get this energy pass 10 to be there, to be present, and it is there, it is present. It's added with the, you know, it's given its benefits with the resolution that it's now introduced and everything. So again, relatively simple mod to do, not a difficult mod to do. And for those that do have the MUSE and for some reason don't like it and are thinking maybe of getting rid of it or something, you know what, don't do that. Try this mod first and then decide. I think you will not be disappointed. And yeah, that's it guys. Hope you enjoyed this little video of mine, this little kind of take on these IEMs, you know, MUSE Power, HzSound WaistDrum, all of these TRNs, yeah. Yeah, expect some more. Any questions as usual, please feel free to ask. All right. Anyway, take care.